When you fail, you actually have either two outcomes. You either learn or you earn, but either way, it's propelling you forward. If anything, early success is the worst thing to happen to you because you think you did it because you're brighter or great or this or that, when in fact you haven't learned the skills.
Do you want to create products and experiences with the potential to become iconic? Welcome to Conversations with Roberto. Here I sit down with top entrepreneurs, innovators, designers, founders, and thought leaders. And I'm driven by curiosity and seek to unpack actionable and meaningful insight for you. Because as a designer, I believe I have an obligation to create more than just well-designed products and experiences. These creations must serve a clear purpose, embody innovation, perform exceptionally, and exhibit an outstanding quality. In essence, my goal is to guide you in building iconic products and experiences that matter and get people talking about you. Just imagine, with this knowledge, we can create a better future for all of us. I'm Roberto Indebitzing, the founder of Freeframe.design, an internationally active, purpose-driven design studio based here in Zurich, Switzerland. I'm really honored to talk with the godfather of digital media.
I'll make you an offer you can't refuse.
I saw there was a movie. I found the movie with you in it.
That should be buried somewhere. Now,
It was buried.
I have a number of friends in the business that have asked me to embarrass myself on screen. No, I'm not somebody to be in front of the camera.
So I like to start with the cocktail question, which means what do you do and how do you answer that?
My parents still don't know the answer to that. I got advice very early in life that you either have to be the best at what you do or the only one doing it. Because if you're the only one doing it, by definition, you're the best. So what I evolved into was getting involved in what I thought would be the next thing. And if you're right, two things happen. One, you're the only one out there doing it, so you have no competition. And if the world goes to where you're standing, suddenly you appear to be a genius. When you're proven right and all the big corporations come in and spend billions of dollars, time to leave and move on. So I started on the internet in 1978, probably before most of your listeners were born. I didn't do it because I thought it was cool or this or that. I happened to be in the right place at the right time. But it turned me on to seeing the possibilities of what computers would do in our lives. I mean, when I first met Bill Gates, he wasn't a billionaire, and he had this vision that every household would have a computer, and people thought he was nuts. Computers cost a little less than a car. The TV commercials were, you can balance your checkbook. I mean, nobody could figure out what to do with these things. And I came up with what I thought would be meaningful things. And it's funny to show you how early and what you don't know, because it's not that you're right or that you're smart, it's that it's a blank slate. So my first company, we had two ideas for products. One was a video editor. We thought video would get on computers, and we called that the Jasmine Clipper. And the other is, what if I wrote something on my computer and I sent it through the internet to your computer and you could read it? And we called that digital mailman. And I said that would take too long to catch on because people would have to understand. So email wasn't a good enough idea. So there's many examples of where you have no idea how big the world will be. I created the first auction, which evolved into eBay. I worked with Reid Hoffman to launch LinkedIn. I mean, those are the big ones everybody knows. But I also made the first Laserdisc, which nobody remembers what those things are, but those led to making CD-ROMs, which led to making computer games, which led to making the first social network 10 years before Facebook. I mean, and what you also learn, and when I recently saw you in Switzerland, I was reminded of at Davos, is when you have a big idea, it attracts other minds the way a light attracts moths. So that first social network that I worked on, Mark Cuban, he did the sports part of it. There was a new thing called DoubleClick advertising that was part of it. I had an idea to wire the nation's schools, and one of the people that worked on it was a guy looking for his next job named Eric Schmidt, who went on to become chairman of Google. So you see that each new thing, it's the same people driving innovation around the world. And it's a very small club. There's no one stopping you from joining it. It's just most people are afraid to do something that they haven't tried. And if you don't get
Why
out
do
of
you
your
think is
comfort
that?
zone, you'll never accomplish anything. They're afraid of it because their parents and teachers that wished them well tried to shield them from pain. They don't want to see them
Mhm.
fail. So they told them to go to good school, take that safe job. If you got out of college and Google offered you a great job, but you wanted to do your own startup, your parents would be apoplectic, yelling at you like, no, take the good job. When in
Right.
fact, the people that didn't take the good job are the people that created all the new companies and the
True.
new opportunities. And we live in an era of endless innovation. There's
Right.
no shortage of ability. You're one click away from 6 billion people. So you only have to be right for a nanosecond to make a fortune. So,
And you had a couple of nanoseconds there.
yeah, if you help 5 people, you have friends. If you help 1 million become wealthy, if you help 1 billion, you change history. So all of us have that ability. And the secret is solve a problem. The world has tons of problems. Most people think entrepreneurs sell things when in fact what they do is solve things.
Right. It's also the other S. Do you think that you're you seem to jump into opportunities and you're not afraid of failure, in quotes failure? I mean, it's not failure, it's learning.
Yeah. So when you fail, you actually have either two outcomes. You either learn or you earn. But either way, it's propelling you forward. If anything, early success is the worst thing to happen to you because you think you did it because you're brighter or great or this or that, when in fact you haven't learned the skills. If you talk to venture capitalists, people like me that invest in companies, we'd rather invest in somebody that's had a few failures because they learned lessons on somebody else's dollar, you know. Um, and that's really, what it's about. Now, throwing in the towel and giving up, that's stupid because you never know how close you are to success. I mean, my
Yeah,
go-to
true.
example is years ago, it's been a few years, you used to have online dating before you had swiping on your phone, and it would be a
Mhm.
still picture and you could read about the person. And when broadband came about, somebody said, let's put video that you could now see the person, hear their personality, everything. It was called Tune In Hookup. It was a flawless interface. It was beautifully done. You could go on, you could see these videos. The first video was a guy standing in front of the elephant at the zoo saying why you should date him. Well, the
Mhm.
problem with the business plan is they didn't realize how bad these videos would be and how many losers there were out there looking for a date.
Right.
But they looked at the data. Their business was failing, but they noticed something that wasn't in the business plan. That though you didn't want to date this person, you sure wanted to show all your friends the video of what the dating world looked like. So they changed the
Mhm.
name of the company from Tune In Hookup to YouTube and became billionaires their first year in business. Twitter was a music site. I mean,
Mhm.
most businesses pivot, and
Right.
pivoting is part of the process. It's not that you were wrong to start it. It's that once you get in past the obvious idea of your business and you get deeper into the weeds, you actually discover things that no one else has ever done. And that's where the real learning takes place.
Mhm. So ideas are still relevant. They are just not worth the amount of money. Just implementation, I guess, and the pivoting and finding the right spot.
It all comes down to that. I mean, Sam Altman, who's famous now for ChatGPT and OpenAI, he used to run Y Combinator, which was an incubator, and it made billions and billions of dollars for people. Most successful incubator in the history of the world. And they got so good at it that they even went to entrepreneurs and said, you don't even have to have an idea. We actually have a list of ideas that we think would make good companies. Okay. What we want is people. So he invested in people that had the right personality traits to make it. And there's a number of factors that over time have proven. One of the more interesting ones from a US perspective is that 1 out of 3 Fortune 500 companies was founded by an immigrant or the first generation child of an immigrant. And if you think about what does entrepreneurism and immigrants have in common, they both go out of their comfort zone. They leave the place where they're comfortable to go and find a better opportunity. So it's actually
They sure do.
the kind of person that would give up their whole family, say goodbye, and go somewhere else is really the kind of person that creates a business. And so part of there's one venture capital firm in Silicon Valley that only invests in immigrant founders, and they've had tremendous success.
Yeah, I believe that. And I believe also the community is helpful there because they help each other.
Well, a lot of people try to copy and say we're going to be the Silicon Valley of the Alps, the Silicon Valley of the Middle East, the Silicon Valley of wherever, and they all fail because it's not just having a university that makes engineers. It's not just having offices with a foosball table. What it really needs is a generation of successful entrepreneurs that are willing to reinvest in the next generation. And so way back in ancient times, the 1960s and 70s, there was a company called Fairchild Semiconductor, one of the first chip companies. And people made so much money that they started investing in the next generation of the Intels and the next and the next. So the whole mentality of Silicon Valley is, if I could do it and I'm not the smartest guy out there, other people are going to do it. Let me see what the ideas are. And getting smart money, and by that I mean people that can open doors and connect you to other customers, or more importantly, somebody that will acquire you, really is part of the success.
Yeah. So the success is that's one success, but is it just when they are successful, or do they work with each other when they are still trying to figure it out, or is it fierce? The competition must be fierce.
It is more cooperation in the beginning. So you're in a community where you could go to any bar or place for meetups where other founders are talking about their problems and sharing stuff. And hey, do you know somebody that can do this? Or, oh, I know somebody at this company. And so in each new field, I mean, we were just at Davos and you had the leading minds of the world that are building AI all in one place. And we weren't sitting there saying, I'm going to win and you suck. We were like, here's what we're working on. Here's what, and there's a real sharing because the pie is so big that no one's trying to have it all to themselves. And for change to take place, you need multiple things happening. If you're the only guy making a computer, it's really tough to explain that computers are really important. If everybody's making computers, it catches on, and you just then have to be the best or unique. So that's part of the process. And it's also finding a use case that has a quick return for somebody. So if you can save a company $1 billion a year, you can march into that CFO and say, here's what I have. And it's not a hard sell. You may have to prove it, but there's nobody that doesn't want to have that type of change or growth or cut out cost.
Mm-hmm.
And you see that with ChatGPT was the fastest to get to 100 million users in 5 days. And there's not
unbelievable
any of us that the second we used it didn't tell all our friends about this amazing new thing. And
when did you hear about that? When you have been like ChatGPT 1, I guess. Before
I think
that.
day 3. And I was sitting there. I asked it to write a song about my love of pastrami. I asked it to do things in the style of Shakespeare. I still try to get AI to create jokes, because jokes are something that a computer doesn't understand yet. And it's fascinating because what makes a good joke is not the words or the information in the joke. It's what you know in your mind that isn't there that you infer. But I could instantly see, and there was a professor that did this as a demo, as a speech. It's somewhere on YouTube, that he said, I'm going to pretend that we've just come out with a new drug at some drug company. And in 30 minutes, he names it. He makes a logo for it. He makes a video that explains it, with the old people walking, like every commercial you've ever seen. He makes a sales funnel and email blasts and everything, and basically launches an entire business with no graphic artists, no models, no photographers, no actors, no employees, no writers, nobody that writes code, builds the website, and you have an entire business. So if you were going to launch a magazine about snowboarding or collecting Barbie doll shoes or something that doesn't exist, for zero capital, no employees, you could launch this new business, test it out across millions of people, and see if there's any stickiness to it without a dime, without a penny. And so if you can get that far into a business today without capital, what's your excuse?
There is none. Being afraid of failure on your own. That's why I like the part of disrupting you, where you mentioned it's also important to know yourself first, to know how you push your boundaries on. Don't get stuck on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's painful for people to, do that introspection. It's like having cosmetic surgery, but you hold the scalpel to really see what your shortcomings are, and then surround yourself with people that are great. I through most of my career, through 5 or 6 companies, had the same assistant. Why? I'm horrible with details. I tell everybody, don't leave an original contract with me because it will disappear. But my skill set isn't details. My skill set is seeing a little bit farther past the horizon than others. And I was once on a board, I had on my board a very famous venture capitalist who pulled me aside. We were doing well. We built a business that went from zero to an exit of 600 million in 18 months. Pretty good. And he said, Jay, don't you want to be known as a button-down CEO? And I thought for about a half a second. I go, no, I actually don't. There's a lot of people that can run a company better than me. There's a lot of people that could take over Toyota and get it to do 2% more profit. That isn't me. All the giant corporations that have called me in, I was not their first phone call. We've tried everything else. We are in trouble. The market has changed. Let's call Jay. I don't think I'm under NDA anymore, but I'll give you the most bizarre call of the past, 5, 6 years. I got a call from the number 3 at Google that they wanted me to come in and help them. And I'm like, wait a second, no false modesty here, but when I want to know something, I Google it. You've got buildings filled with PhD scientists in every field. What in God's name could I possibly know that you don't already have? And he just said to me, we don't know how to bring a product to market, which is true.
Wow.
They have a real tough time of. And once I dug into it and started consulting for them, I realized why. It's not a lack of intelligence. They've created an environment that is the antithesis of bringing a product to market. Google's ad business, making over $1 billion a day, has such an incredible profit margin that anything else you're going to launch isn't even a blimp to get noticed. So launching a business that makes $1 million a day wouldn't get you promoted, noted. I mean, no one
It's
would care.
there.
So what you do instead is you keep on adding new features and making the thing and polishing this thing endlessly, hoping you get noticed for some scientific innovation, not for making a buck, which is not really good for the bottom line of a company.
Right.
So they have some amazing technology that they've never brought to market. And it's all of us are having a less great experience in the world because they can't get these products out.
Google not been able to bring it down. If you make a product that brings out, I don't know, 20 million or 50 million, it's nothing for them.
I won't have the company, but I was once acquiring a company for its technology. We really needed it. I was at a large corporation at the time. And I got the guy to agree to sell his little startup. It was pre-revenue for $17 million. And I, negotiated hard, and, he was kind of settled on it and angry, and, but it was a done deal. And then I go, because it's a capital acquisition, I have to get approval by the board. And so I try to get on the board agenda, and they go, Jay, you have to have something of $50 million or larger for it to get on the board agenda for the board meeting. We're a huge corporation. And I can't complete this deal without the board approval. That's what the rules are in doing an acquisition. So I had to call the guy up, and I said, I've got to change the terms of our deal. He goes, Jay, I'm fed up. I said, just let me finish my sentence. He goes, Jay, I'm not going to go below 17 million. I said, I understand. Just hear me out. He goes, okay, what do you want? I want to pay you 50 million. And we bought it for 50 million.
No way.
Yeah, it's the only way to get the deal done.
So let me see. The world seems kind of broken in that field. Oh, weird. Depending on which side you are, I guess.
If I ever wanted to do I'm never going to work again on this planet and burn every bridge, I would really do a book about how effed up the corporate world is nowadays. Every CEO, and I've been a public CEO, will say, I'm doing it for the shareholders. I'm doing it for the employees. I'm doing it for the customers. I care about, God and family and apple pie or whatever. When in fact, the board incentivizes CEOs that if you can move that stock this quarter, we're going to back up a truck and give you more money than the next 3 generations of your family can spend. So you're totally focused on what the board rewards. So for most people that are CEOs that are not creative or innovative, the easiest way to hit that number is to cut out research, stop developing next year's products, streamline, get rid of everybody. And then you have this amazing quarter of high profits because you're not doing anything except taking the profit of what somebody else invented. Then you get this giant bonus of $100 million. The next quarter, the quarter after, it falls over because you've got nothing to ship. You get fired and the next guy comes in and you really don't care. And they do this again. So they have all the CEOs on these 16-week hamster wheels. And it's killing innovation. But the flip side means that for the little guy that's inventing something new, there's a giant corporation that's willing to overpay to buy that company just to look like they're doing something growing, to move their stock to give the CEO so he can buy a third summer home and another jet. And there was a headline in the news this morning, and I know the CEO and I know the company, and it's one of the top 50 largest in the world, that just bought a company solely for the headline to move the stock to make it look like they're doing something moving forward, when in fact there's no there, and the entrepreneur got a huge payday.
Well, I know what I'm going to do now. I mean, that kind of, I think that part is broken, but the other part, what I think is quite good on it, it's the opportunity for that little entrepreneur or this little company they get a lot of
Yeah.
money. They start to invest in smaller companies that also like start building and creating mind-blowing products.
Most of what makes money for Microsoft or Google or Facebook are not things that they developed in-house. It's they just buy a company that figured out the new thing and then put it into their machine. And these machines have such reach and you know, WhatsApp was a great example. The exact number escapes me. Somebody can Google it, but basically a guy went to work, applied for work at Facebook. They turned him down. He couldn't get a job. He built WhatsApp. And the next year, Facebook bought it from him for $17 billion.
Wow.
He would have given him the idea for free. Jack Ma, great guy in China, only started his billion-dollar company because the new Kentucky Fried Chicken that opened wouldn't hire him to work in the restaurant. He actually became a billionaire in high tech before he owned a PC.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
He saw that the internet was going to change China and Asia. He didn't know anything technical. I'm not an engineer. I've taught at the largest engineering school in the United States for almost a decade. I taught how to build high-tech startups, and I'm not an engineer. You can hire engineers. Nowadays, you can hire AI to do your engineering for you. And there's so many opportunities. The one that cracks me up right now when I do my stump speeches around the world is so many people want to become influencers. If I'm an influencer, I can make tons of money. I can be the next Kardashian. And yes, there are, Kylie Kardashian did become a billionaire at 21. But now some of the influencers, these cute women with freckles that just seem just so perfect, they're not real. They are AI generated influencers. And there's a few that are making more than $8 million a year. That means you're sitting home alone, making somebody on AI. You need no computer background. And in China, the biggest soap opera, the biggest show in the country, all the actors are real except the star, who many people don't realize is just AI. So now imagine what that does to data-driven advertising, where the ads that you will see in your Facebook feed, in your Google feed, have a spokesperson that they know because they have 90,000 pieces of data on you that will appeal to you at a subconscious sexual level, whatever your taste is. And there'll be a million custom influencers out there, each talking to just one customer, because it costs them nothing to create this.
Yeah, that's something coming here, especially in now that in the States there are elections. It's election year.
Oh, well, that's all the fake videos and all the fake stuff. But talk about doing things first. I wrote a white paper in 2011, and you can find it on the internet still, where I said the next presidential election will be determined by social media. Now, you have to go back to when 2011 was. Nobody knew what I was talking about. Nobody believed it. And the campaign managers were just spending money on television and didn't realize that a whole two generations weren't watching live television. They were pre-recording and skipping the commercials and everything. And so I met with the campaign managers, and I ended up getting 3 Republican and 1 Democratic presidential candidate as clients, with the winner being Obama, who we had. And I convinced them to spend money on social media. And by the next election, social media did determine the presidency. So I was 4 years too early. But what I didn't see is that a foreign country, by just using the same ad targeting, could target those Americans who believed in angels and spend $300,000 and change the outcome of a U.S. election. Now, I grew up in an era where our CIA would go and rig elections by, kidnapping, killing, exploding cigars, all kinds of crazy stuff that have been done around the world, right? And that somebody else, it happened to be a foreign country, but anybody could have influenced and done this thing for $300,000. Each candidate raises over $2 billion to get elected. So now that everybody's woken up, and we just saw it in South America where right before the election, they made fake videos of the candidates saying horrible things and spread them in fake accounts on social media, that it does two things. One, it can influence the elections, but more critical is we're getting to the point where we won't believe any video. We won't believe any audio. We won't believe any still picture. So we won't have any faith in our institutions. This destroys democracy globally.
So what do we believe in?
We don't.
We just, like cattle, feel the way it's going.
We stop caring about helping our country. We stop believing that there's anybody doing good. I mean, it really chips away at what makes society function. And we're already seeing this, and we're seeing this in virtually every corner of the world, where the disenfranchised aren't just the poor, it's across the spectrum. And because the social media algorithms put you in a thought bubble where whatever will antagonize you, they'll put more in because it gets you more engaged. If you like something, la-di-da. If something gets you angry, you spend more time on social media. That we're spewing hate and really destroying so much of our world. And as you know, on a different topic, this is something that I've wrestled with now, realizing that many of the innovations that I've been a part of, I thought were helping mankind. And when you get the gray hair and you had some time to reflect during the pandemic, I see the dark side of them. And this comes out in my art. This is what I'm wrestling with is, what is the outcome? And everybody that's tried to create a really sophisticated AI by training them on human conversations, those conversations are racist and angry, and because they're just taking the conversations off of Twitter and everything else. It's a sad commentary.
Do you think there is a way to pivot that? By taking different kind of data, or actually deliberately moving it towards more positive way of interacting with each other, talking to each other, caring, empathy? Actually, things that those beautiful virtues, what do we have?
I'd say of the studies that I've seen, the one that was most interesting on this topic is because when we call a helpline or airline, that the majority of our interaction now is with chatbots or with software. And we can order our food and have it delivered and get in an Uber without ever talking to the driver. We can make it through our life with zero social interaction. So we are losing that ability to communicate in person, face to face. And what disappears is that empathy for the other and that connection to the other. And it's funny, again, going off topic, you can edit it out, but the painting that I'm working on today is exactly on that topic. It's set in ancient Greece. Perseus is looking at his iPhone, and Medusa is exasperated because I have no power over this generation. They don't make eye contact.
That's so good. Yeah, true. It works.
I mean,
it works for him.
The way the dots connect in my head are a little warped, but I think the message gets across in that painting. Plus, it's fun to paint. It's fun to paint Medusa. Having fun with that. But yeah, there's a major change, and it's interesting. Disrupt You, super successful. The book's been in a dozen languages, but the genesis of its sequel of Future Proofing You was I got an email from a millennial that said, "This is all great, but I could never do it." And I realized that maybe that generation sees the world differently. Let me challenge myself, and I know you know the book. I took a homeless immigrant, mentored him one day a week for a year, and he went from homeless to self-made millionaire. But what I learned from that process was how the next generations see the world, and they live in a different world than I do. And, it's a world where if I look at it from an outsider as an anthropologist, it's lost a lot of the things that make us human. If most of your interactions are not with people, you've learned how to interact with the machine, and the machines learned how to teach you to interact.
True. So if we, just an idea that I had here, how about if we have machines that actually pivot human communication into more friendliness? And like you mentioned, like chatbots, we talk the whole time with chatbots or something. And sometimes people are angry because they lost their luggage or their food isn't delivered. But if those chatbots start to be like friendly and empathetic in a way, if they can be like that, people start to learn to communicate in a friendly tone instead of like being rude with each other the whole time.
It's possible.
Could be utopia, but I mean, could be something using technology to manipulate people in the better direction. I don't know if it's better, but in the direction that actually makes us more humans.
Well, if you read The Prince by Machiavelli, a benevolent dictator is the greatest form of government. It's really hard to find a benevolent dictator. You know, you could say, the exceptions, like Singapore, a great example. But it's easier to rule by fear. Love, you control. It's in your heart. Fear, I control. So it's more likely that our AI and our algorithms are heading towards fear as opposed to empathy, right? And there's many types of fear. Facebook lives off of fear of missing out. Everybody's life looks so much better than your life on social media because it's much like watching sports on the news. You don't watch the boring 2-hour football game. You watch 30 seconds of the most exciting highlights and you go, wow, that's an exciting sport. I'm not a sports fan. It's not an exciting sport. None of the sports
Go
are.
to baseball.
But
Try to
baseball's
watch
the
baseball.
worst.
I don't get it.
I wanted to be a good dad and get my kids into sports. I don't watch any sports. I don't play any sports. So I took them to a Dodgers game in Los Angeles when they were little kids, all excited. You're going and get the hot dog. There's the crowd, explain the game. And by the sheer luck of stupidity, it was one of only 11 no-hitters in the history of Major League Baseball. So they call it a perfect game. I'm calling it, this is the most boring thing you ever saw. No one hit a ball.
Right. Wow.
But I digress. So the point is, in the news, what you see are the highlight reels that make sports exciting. In social media, you see the highlight reels of even fake stuff, of people pretending to have this better life. And now with AI, it's even worse. Everybody has filters, so everybody looks perfect. Everybody looks thin and beautiful. They can be in any exotic location, and you're sitting there alone in your room feeling miserable. So social media has made more mental stress, has made being a teenager really, really difficult, and has contributed to the fact that in the US, and I know those stats best, suicide rates are off the charts.
Wow.
So the average life expectancy of an American has gone down over the past few years. And it's not because of the pandemic.
Interesting.
It's because of, social change.
Do you remember the movie Brazil?
Oh, one of my favorites.
Where it's a great movie. Where he says, "We're all in it together, kid."
And if you think about it, that really predicted the future in a dystopian way that so many great science fiction writers, could see a future where technology evolved a way that isn't what humanity was about. I mean, we've only lived in social arrangements larger than a family for about 14,000 years, which isn't a long time. And the purpose of getting together was the communal benefits of security and safety and being able to grow crops and have a better life of being part of a community. And somehow this is now devolving into, you know, other areas. But the positive is anytime there's problems, there's an opportunity for somebody to build a solution to make the world better.
I really want to pivot more into the positive side, because it really starts to get really dark, and we can go deeper into that rabbit hole. But I don't know. It feels like, do you know the movie Idiocracy?
Yeah.
Which is pretty much like We're Living Now. And I heard a fun fact. I don't know if it's true, but it sounds pretty reasonable. They had to look for shoes for those people, for the actors or the people wearing some special shoes in the movie. And they looked for the most ugliest shoes that that nobody would ever buy, that are horrible, they look uncomfortable, and they would look like being into the future. And then they found this real small company, the Croc Company. And a couple of years later, now you have Crocs everywhere, like even cowboy boots Crocs. So the movie is actually more a documentary than a movie.
Hey, there's been a ton of things that have been launched by being in a movie. I mean, it's a great way to market almost anything.
Right. I mean, you've seen a couple of things on talking about movies and launching things.
Oh yeah, well, I've had the good fortune to work at two of the biggest movie studios, and yeah, product placement's a big part of it, and you know, the right brand and the right thing can change the outcome of anything. And but there's so much opportunity. We live in a world where anyone, anywhere, can compete everywhere. You don't have to be in a first world country. You don't have to, if you can have an internet connection, that's pretty much all you need. And most of the tools that you need are free. And you don't need special education anymore. What you need to do is think of a problem and then disrupt you. I teach people how to, in 30 days, come up with a $1 million idea. And then don't give up. There's the old adage, if you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. So most people are stopping themselves from being successful. No one is stopping you. And once people realize that, there's no stopping them. When I took this young kid who had grown up on welfare and didn't have a future and didn't believe anything, and when I told him he was special, when I told him he was able to do something, his first month, I think he made $70,000.
Wow.
It was an unheard of amount of money to him. He had no capital. He was homeless. He slept on people's sofas. He had no infrastructure of family or anything. He was an immigrant. But after that first month of success, something that he didn't believe was possible, there was no stopping him. He just, worked unbelievable. And when his business hit that eventual problem, that wall that would crush it, I really thought it was over. He had done about $500,000 in 6 months. And I'm like, okay, that's a decent book. A guy who went from homeless to $500,000. It's not what I wanted, but and when he came into that weekly meeting, he said, yeah, we hit this problem. So here's how I pivoted. And now we didn't miss anything. And this week, my revenues were even higher. I was speechless. I mean, he had exceeded the master, as they would say. Nothing was going to stop him from his goal. And I called the book Future Proofing You because at the end of the year, he worked 7 days a week for an entire year, no social life, no TV, spend your days, making business calls and your night doing the work. But from going from having no money to having $1 million, what drove him at the end was he was going to take the next year off and travel and see things and not work, not because he had enough money for the rest of his life, but because he had learned the tools that he knew that he was future-proof. No matter what happened in the future, he now knew the secret formula for being successful. It was my version of, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach a man a fish, he eats for a lifetime. He learned to fish. And I've heard from many readers, it's a favorite part. If you have a book in you, please write a book, because you hear from readers all over the world of how their life changed because maybe I shined a light on what they can do. They did the work. I never met them. I never went to their country. I don't know anything about it. And suddenly they've had tremendous success in all kinds of fields that I've heard people. A guy in, I want to say it was India or Pakistan, it might have been Pakistan, went to dental school and couldn't get a job as a dentist. Nobody was hiring him. He didn't have the money to do anything. And he heard, there was a story in my book that sparked something in him. And he basically copied that same business except for his country. And he's now the richest dentist in his country because nobody would hire him. And that just makes a smile on my face, because if I can get more people working on the problems that we face, maybe we can solve some of these problems. I mean, somebody just came up with the best use of AI for climate change that blew my mind. One of the largest sources of greenhouse gases are cow farts, cows creating methane. And it's a huge problem. It's like 8 or 9% of all the greenhouse gases. That's more than all the cars. Well, why do cows fart? Because the biome in their gut, when it breaks down the grass that they eat, releases methane. So what if you took CRISPR gene editing software, used AI to run through all the permutations, and you then edit the DNA of the gut bacteria, so when they digest, they don't make methane. And they've now done this. So you're going to see cows taking a pill around the world and will no longer have all that methane being produced. That is mind-blowing. Somebody else used the same CRISPR and AI to figure out what in our mouth creates plaque, which creates cavities. Mm-hmm. So they've now solved that. That'll be productized, and now your dentist will go out of business because nobody will be getting cavities. I mean, the innovation that people have. We have a contest in the U.S. sponsored by different corporations of the high school kid with the best science project. I don't know if in Switzerland you had science project in school. I was the prototypical example of baking soda and vinegar volcano. That was my little, I liked building the volcano. That was fun.
Yeah. You went better into magic than later.
Yeah, but no great scientific achievement there. But there was a high school girl a few years ago who looked at what are the leading causes of death. Number 4 was going to a hospital. Not what you went for the hospital for, but getting an infection. And she thought about it and she said, what if we made sutures, stitches, that change color if the incision is infected? And she wasn't a scientist. Her parents weren't scientists. She played with different pH values with vegetables and stuff in the fridge. And she was smart enough to have patented it in high school. And she now, because of this, saves 200,000 lives a year before she even graduates high school. It makes me feel like a lazy bum. I mean, what are we doing when, So look at a problem, look at it with fresh eyes, realize nobody else has the same point of view that you do. And you may have a solution that seems obvious to you, but isn't obvious to a bunch of other people that don't have your life experience.
That's so true. By bringing your point of view into the whole problem-solving solution. And I really would like people to read your book, Disrupt You, with also the other one, Future-Proofing You. But I think Disrupt You feels like it's written for now.
The predictions that were in there have obviously come true now. We're coming up on the 10th anniversary next year. Yeah, this year of when I wrote it. And what's, easy is people always ask me for all these years, all my predictions that come true and stuff. I'll let you in on the secret. The easiest way to predict the future is to hang out with the people that are coding it. So I know what Microsoft's working on. I know what Google's working on. I have friends at all these places. It's obvious to see, and it takes several years for Apple to come out with their augmented reality glasses that just shipped. But you know what's coming because of the time it takes to bring things to market. So it's fairly easy for me to write and know what's happening in the next 5-10 years. There's surprises along the way, and probably the challenge of an entrepreneur is you can't predict the exact timing of anything. So if you're too early with your idea, you better have enough capital to be able to stay in business until the world catches up. If you're too late, everybody's already jumped in, and
So luck has a lot to do with your invention and
yeah.
building.
Well, you make your own luck. So if you try 100 times and you fail 97, you're still 3 times more successful than the person that doesn't try.
Right.
So people look at my, accomplishments and, things and go, wow, you are so successful. No, I fail more than you do. I have tons and tons of stuff. I've made billion-dollar mistakes, and when you're not doing well, those keep you up at night and really haunt you and go, how was I so stupid? But, there's always the new idea. There's always, the only thing that's constant is change. Right. And the pace of change is faster than Darwinian rates. It's faster than people are capable of adapting. And it's definitely faster than large corporations can adapt. So their only way to survive is the checkbook. They can buy the future that they want.
Yeah, there is something you mentioned, like it's the digital Darwinism at the moment. It's mind-blowing. But do you think there are still a lot of opportunities? But in Davos, you mentioned a statistic of people losing a job over AI. I cannot recall it.
Yes. Yeah, so in my book, I said that half of all jobs will disappear, by 2030 globally. At Davos, the head of the International Monetary Fund kicked off with a speech saying 40% of all jobs will disappear over the next 3 years. So that's not crazy, Jay. That's, International Monetary Fund. And what people don't understand is at first they're like, oh, well, self-driving vehicles, truck drivers will lose their jobs, or automated factories, factory workers will lose their jobs, or robots on a farm, that it's all these blue collar workers. I don't have to worry about it. AI is going to replace middle management. AI is going to replace accounting. AI is going to replace most lawyers. AI is going to be writing copy. AI is going to replace hiring models and photographers and makeup artists to do ads, and copywriters and engineers for coding web pages and building apps. And the speed at which it will do these things is really fast. But there's a window here where you can use those tools and compete against those that aren't, so that you can charge less than a company that's using 10 humans to do it and suddenly grab a ton of business. And so you're seeing this right now. And it's fascinating that, one of the industries that's always the first to use technology, and if you don't live in the world, this wouldn't come common sense, but the porn industry has always led with technology. I'm convinced that after Gutenberg printed the Bible, the next thing he printed probably was porn. Now, probably not true, but that's the example here. But
close by.
But phone sex, when phones came out and everything. So now all these people that went on to OnlyFans and other stuff to do, sex over the internet, and are making a fortune. AI can do it better, cheaper, and you can create 1,000 different models of every,
Mhm.
shape and whatever.
Right.
And that's taking over. So, your porn stars are going to be replaced by AI. I mean, it's
Right.
fascinating how fast this technology
They,
is
mhm.
changing jobs. But you can also harness it, and maybe you'll be out of business in 2 years, but you'll make 20-30 million dollars in those 2 years. So, you know, it's how fast you can adapt, and you should be able to adapt faster than a company that has overhead and planning and board meetings and the biggest distraction for big corporations is their existing business. When I was called into Sony, Sony was the number 2 brand in the world, a giant company, the Walkman, everything going right for them. And Apple comes along with the iPod and you know, takes over consumer electronics, and then they came out with the iPhone and took over Nokia's business phone. But Sony was so successful, it was the company of Japan, that when their execs went to the golf course on the weekend, the competition that they saw was Panasonic and Toshiba and the other companies doing the same thing as them. They never thought of Apple. They never thought of software, right? It wasn't on their horizon, right? The big three in Detroit were busy worrying about what's Toyota going to do, what's Mercedes going to do. They didn't take Elon Musk and Tesla seriously. But Elon didn't say, I'm going to build a car. He said, I'm going to make a computer that has wheels. It's a different way of looking at it. So now the automakers are like, how do we add self-driving to a car? No, how do you build a machine that can do something, and then you can add tires and call it a car. You can add wings and call it a drone. But it's the software that you're building. The other stuff is a peripheral. And so anyone can compete with anybody. I mean, Apple, if you're really honest, is a failed computer
Mhm.
company. It never got past
Right.
6% market share. So they went
Mhm.
in and said, well, let's see if we can try consumer electronics. Boom, killed it in consumer electronics. The time they came out with the
Right.
iPhone, Nokia was 45% of the global market.
Wow.
Nokia looked at this thing that had no buttons and was big and
Mhm.
laughed. I was at the Nokia board meeting on their retreat,
Mhm.
and Ballmer and Microsoft laughed at the thing, but they didn't see the app. It wasn't a phone. It was a portable device, and
Right.
speaking to somebody was just one app. And
Mhm.
it
And there
has
were so many different.
fundamentally changed human communication to the point
Mhm.
that most people find a phone call as an annoying interruption. Where, like, my sons are grown, but yeah, you can text dad, but I want to hear your voice, because one sentence in your voice, I know you're doing good. 3 words and an emoji, I'm clueless, right? Um, so there's so much more innovation that we're going to see. And if I was 21 and starting a business, I'm obsessed with augmented reality. We are no longer going to be staring down at our phones and causing neck pain. We're going to have heads up glasses. And if you think about it, in the US last year, 80 million pairs of glasses sold that had one app, Focus. Okay. Another 50 million pairs came with another app called Sun. Oh, I can't see, the sun's in my eyes. Okay. But now, if you can have an app that can guide you through the city, that can translate in subtitles 40 languages. These aren't science fiction, these exist. Imagine traveling the world with 2 pairs of glasses. You go into that far off bar. There's the love of your life sitting there. You give them a pair of glasses. It doesn't matter what language they speak and what language you speak, you guys now can communicate. That is insane. And that's just one app. So here's the opportunity for anybody listening. Google, Apple, Facebook, they've spent billions to make these glasses so that you can just make a simple app that will make you a fortune. So let's go back to the iPhone. We now know that smartphones won. We now know that everybody wants it, and we now have 100 apps that do different things on our phone. But let me go back to the first year of the iPhone. What were the top 10 apps? Meaning somebody made an app and made millions and millions of dollars. I will tell you, my favorite two of the easiest way to make millions of dollars is one of the top 10 apps of the first year was the fart app. You pushed it and made different fart sounds. Another one was a game with cats. So you don't have to spend the billions. The big corporations spent the billions to give you this platform, to put it in your hands. So what if you only did something that identified, vegan food on the shelf, or, whatever.
Something small.
Something that just solves a very specific problem, just like sunglasses, right? The second you understand sunglasses, you bought a pair because you're going to be sitting outside and it really solves that simple problem. So you just need that one app. Now, 10 years from now, every big company is going to have apps. There's going to be tons of things, just like being on the phone today. But right now, the people that are selling these glasses for $3,000 are desperate to convince you to buy a pair. No one's buying the glasses to have the glasses. They're buying the glasses because of some app. So if you have an app that helps them sell the glasses, they will advertise your app for free to the world. So I'll give you a great example. Tablets were a new idea with a touch screen. Apple didn't know how to explain to somebody why you need a touch screen when nobody was using a touch screen. So they wanted to have at least a game that worked. None of the big game companies wanted to make a game for this thing because it's never going to catch on. Nobody wants a big tablet. This makes no sense. So they found a failed game company that had a whole bunch of failures and had nothing going for it. And they agreed for some money to change one of their games to make it work by swiping and touchscreen. And Apple put that game in every TV commercial worldwide for the first year that showed the iPad. And that game was called Angry Birds.
Oh, wow. That's how it comes.
By the second year, forget how many Angry Bird downloads and all that. Angry Birds sold $5 billion worth of merch. T-shirts, lunchboxes, sleeping bags, blankets, towels, socks, right? When I was at Universal, we built a game division from scratch. We were late to the game, but Nintendo and Sega owned the game platform. But Sony was going to be coming out with a game. They were going to be coming out with PlayStation. So Nintendo had Mario Brothers, Sega had Sonic, and Sony had shit. So make a long story short, we said, we'll make a game that's only available on PlayStation if you'll put it in every TV commercial. Because they're going to spend $100 million launching the PlayStation.
Mm-hmm.
That's how Crash Bandicoot went from some guy sitting in the hallway outside of my door to a multi-billion-dollar franchise. Same model. So right now, if you make a small app that works on these glasses, that solves a problem, that is easy communicated in the marketing that Apple's going to spend, or Facebook or Google, you don't need the $100 million budget. They're going to spend that money making you successful. And they're not going to take a piece of your company to do it.
Yeah.
So
Or even if they take it,
we're
go
all
to the
going to
next
be
one.
wearing these glasses. You're all going to have that one app that makes it indispensable for you. And that one app may be different for different things. Maybe it's the watch the instant replay app when you're at the game, whatever it might be. These will become self-evident, but the people that jump in today when there's no competition. I mean, at one point, I had 6 of the top 10 best-selling video games in the United States. That sounds pretty impressive.
That sounds
That
impressive.
was 1995 when I didn't have a whole lot of competition. The second
Well,
I was having my best year with my first startup, I was like, wow, we're killing it. We're going to rule the world. There was a news release from Microsoft that they're going to get into the game business and spend $100 million. I read that and said, I'm out of here. Time to sell the game business. I can't compete. Most money I ever spent on a game was $50,000, right? So there's always the next thing. Now, I didn't recognize that pattern in my 20s. I was lucky that my crazy first things happened to be where the world followed. But once I noticed that the same group of people are always jumping and doing and going to the next thing, that's why at Davos, it was so bizarre to me. Just walking down that one street, I bumped into dozens of people from my life. And it was like, there was an old TV show called This Is Your Life in the US where they brought people back. Do you recognize this voice? Your first grade teacher. It was the people that had been in CD-ROM or video games or early days of social media or all this different stuff. They're now AI companies and they're now this company. And it's that same mentality that they see the world as an ever-evolving opportunity, not as something that's static.
yeah, there's something you mentioned that there are two types of people in this world: those who look for opportunities and those who make it happen. Surround yourself with a ladder.
Yeah. I mean, the fun parable version is there's a young kid that starts at a big company, sees the boss drive up in a Ferrari, and the kid's eyeing that Ferrari, and the boss says, "You like that car?" And the kid goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, if you work really, really hard this year, I might be able to buy a second one."
Right.
So, you can either work on making your dreams come true or work for somebody else to make their dreams come true. I don't believe in reincarnation. You got one shot. Why not build something for yourself, something you can be proud of, something that challenges you, that makes the world a better place? I've just seen it again and again that it's the people that don't quit. You might have to pivot, but if you take that safe job, here's the thing. It's not that security robs ambition, it's the illusion of security that robs ambition. So if you took that safe job, you got that job right out of college at that big corporation, we just told you that AI is going to wipe out half the jobs. When I speak all over the world and there's 10,000 people in the audience, before I start, I ask everybody, make eye contact with somebody else in the room. You don't have to know them. Just stare at them while I say the next sentence. Half of all jobs are going to disappear. Each of you think it's
You
the
got
other
their
person,
attention.
right?
Right.
Well,
Right.
I'm going to tell you how you can make sure it's not you. And yeah, I mean, people really, and now that people are seeing it, and you see all the tech companies laying off tons of people, and it's going to have a huge impact on society. And it's not going to be felt evenly. Different countries are going to be devastated by the amount of jobs lost. Now, new jobs will be created, but maybe having a job isn't the answer. Maybe building something that you can control, at least for a period of time, makes a better plan. And we don't teach that in education. There was a teacher that took Disrupt You and said, I teach at an inner city school where the kids either go to prison or work at McDonald's. Can I adapt your book for high school kids to show them that there's another option. Make a long story short, she became teacher of the year. And the workbook that she created and everything, I leaned into HP and said, you guys have to print these and let's give them out to all the schools so that we can give that mindset. We're basically teaching the same educational system of basic reading and writing that we did 100 years ago. And that system was designed during the Industrial Revolution to give people enough capability to become factory workers. The IQ test was developed by the US military not to make people better, but to figure out who's cannon fodder and who's worth spending the time to train because they'll be alive. Okay?
Oh, wow. Okay. Good to know.
No one's looking out for you. No one's teaching you that there's blinders on you that you can take off, that you can be whatever you want, that there is no class system, there is no caste, there's no betters, there's no people that were born with better. And by the way, and in future proofing you, I cite all the studies. Having a higher IQ doesn't lead to wealth. Going to a 4-year university doesn't lead to wealth. Okay? Being born into wealth, that gives you a head start. But if you weren't lucky enough to be that sperm, now it's up to you. And I've seen it all over the world.
And it's on you and to having mentors that tell you how good you are. I love the part where you teach or tell Vin how great he is, and he was chosen among many, many candidates.
So when I came up with this insane idea, basically the Greek story Pygmalion, that I was going to, take a homeless person, see if I could give them no capital, no business contacts, but change their mindset into a growth mindset, I realized if I was going to have him be successful in a year, I had to snap his mindset as quickly as possible. And there is a psychological principle called the Pygmalion effect. A professor went to an elementary school, tested all the kids, and went back and told the teachers these certain kids would be super achievers this year. They'd learn faster, they'd grow better. And at the end of the year, those kids turned out to be the most exceptional students in the school. But the professor lied. Yes, they all took a test, but he didn't look at the test. He just picked names out of a hat and told the teachers that those were special kids. So if you tell people that they're special and you treat them special, they become special. So when I sat Vin down, I said, Vin, I've interviewed over 200 candidates, and you're the only person that has all the attributes to become a self-made millionaire. Will you do this experiment with me for a year? And he didn't exactly believe in himself or believe in me, but he said, if this guy who's successful sees something, maybe it's there. So I switched his mindset, and he didn't find out till he read the book that I lied to him. I didn't interview 200 people. That would be cheating. That would be cherry picking the best candidate. Vin was the only person I approached. He said yes, and we went from there.
That's so good.
And what's funny is I was going to do it as videotaping each of those mentor sessions. And I went to Tom Bilyeu, who's a very successful motivational speaker, and Impact Theories is his podcast and website and everything. And I said, Tom, what if we, come over your place? And he lived around the corner from me, and we'll do our sessions here each week. And we sat down and did the first session, and he videotaped it. And then Tom, who wrote the foreword to Future Proofing You, took me aside and said, Jay, I love you. I believe in you. You're great. If anybody could do it, but this kid's not going to amount to anything. I'm not going to spend the time videotaping these.
Wow.
Yeah.
Turned out to be a great surprise there.
If an idiot like me can make it, anybody can make it. That's where I should be the living poster child. Whenever I thought I was smart, I've gotten to meet truly the brightest minds on the planet. I'm chairman of a company called Versus. Our chief scientist has solved AI in a way that no one else on the planet did. I mean, these are people that spend, 30, 40 years researching just one topic and really inventing the science. Jay doesn't do that. Jay takes something that somebody else already did and said, aha, we can make money with it over here.
It's funny when I listen to your stories, I always have you as a little kid doing magic in my head. Like having something here and then by a sleight of hand, something else coming out of it?
Well, I'll tell you. So I've been fascinated with magic my whole life. I'm a member of the Magic Castle in Hollywood. I paid my way through college doing magic. But what I realized in hindsight was why magic is such a great tool for business. When you go to a Taylor Swift concert or Adele, you want to hear that singer sing their best song. You love that performer. When you go to the ballet, you want to see the dancers dance their best dance. You want to see the musician play their best music in the orchestra. When you go to see a magician, you want to see him fuck up. You're trying to figure out what they're doing. The audience is against you. So you're intentionally going in front of a room full of people that are against you and have to win them over. If that isn't the best training for pitching, for capital, for sales, to go into a cold room that doesn't want you to succeed. And I've also, by the way, brought magic tricks and stuff into boardrooms and stuff where people give me looks like I'm from Mars because they're so uptight and their culture's so whatever. And
Must be fun.
And I think I told you, one of my close magician friends, one of the greatest high-tech magicians in the world, lives in Zurich by you, Marco Tempest.
No.
Great guy.
No,
you should reach out to him. He's amazing. And he did the same thing that I talk about. When YouTube came out, he saw it as a new platform that if he could be the most famous magician on this new platform, maybe that could help his career. So in the beginning, he'd put up these little videos, and then he'd stay up all night clicking on his video endlessly, back before they had software that stopped that. So if you saw, wow, that video had 1,000 plays, I'll watch it. And then it becomes self-fulfilling because everybody watches the most played. And his videos were amazing, and his tricks were amazing, and he's an amazing guy. And now he works with Accenture and Jet Propulsion Labs, showing what technology can do that maybe really can't do exactly yet. So it's a little bit of here's the technology and a little bit of old magic to put them together. And he says he's a magician, so he's not lying to you. But he was the first to show some of the fun stuff that drones could do when the drones couldn't actually do it yet. And he did things with iPhones that, well, the iPhones couldn't exactly do those things yet. And transparent TVs and robots to really open our minds and our imagination of what is possible. You know, the only difference between magic and science is timing. You know, the first magicians that used electromagnets, right? When nobody else knew about electricity, magicians.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask you, I mean, if you read fantasy books or not fantasy, let's say science fiction books, you see all the magic, all the things going to happen, like the flying cars and all that stuff. But a lot of things that are in the books are already here. And I was wondering, how can we take it to the next step? Where can we look at for inspiration? And now you're giving me a glimpse or an idea. It's like, look where magicians are, what magicians are doing. Or this kind of people looking at technology in a different way to take it to the next level. Because looking at the books, it seems like everything it's been done before.
Well, I will tell you from the flip side, in the magic community, getting that shock and awe from the audience of that's amazing is really tough. The bar has been raised because so much of our everyday life is just magical. 150 years ago, Robert Houdin, a French magician who the father of modern magic, of going to theater and seeing somebody on a stage, he had this little orange tree that was real small, and it would grow on the stage, and oranges would appear, and he'd take out and toss the oranges to the audience, and people's minds were blown. And it was a mechanical object. But back then, you know, other than maybe somebody owned a watch and you didn't know how a pocket watch worked, nobody understood that anything was magical. And the French were having problems with one of their colonies in North Africa. The marabouts were revolting, and the French didn't want to have another war. So they went to this magician and said, is there something you can do? And so he went with his 10-year-old son, and went in front of the big, I don't know what he was, Sheikh, Sultan, whatever the head guy was called, and says, give me your biggest, strongest warrior. And the big giant guy comes out. And this little 10-year-old boy comes out carrying this little bag, and he opens the little bag, and the magician takes out a scarf, and he rubs it on the big, strong guy, and he puts it back in the bag and says, I've now taken away his strength. And he asks that big, strong guy to pick up the little bag that the 10-year-old boy just put down. And with all his pulling and muscles and everything, he can't lift the bag. The king's like, oh my God, my soldier's lost all his strength. When in fact, the bottom of the bag was metal, and the stage was metal, and he had an electromagnet system set up at a time when nobody had seen any of this. And they won the war without a single bullet. And magicians were used in World War II by the Allies. And I could fill you with tons of stories. And I'll just end with me being gobstruck. So Robert Houdin invented a special magic clock that's famous, and he made several of them, and they're collector's items that magicians like to have. And I'm sitting at a, how do I describe it? A private club that the only members are members of the intelligence community, your three-letter guys, your spies. And there's a collection of all of Robert Houdin's clocks, like 6 of them. And I'm in awe. I mean, to have one is amazing, to have bought that many. And so I ask, whose are those? It's a guy who spent his years as the head magician for the CIA for 40 years. And I go, that's a job? I would have wanted that job. Nobody told me that was a job, right? Be the CIA's top magician for quick changes of disguises, all kinds of misdirection, how to conceal things. I'm like, that's a cool job.
Makes sense now.
Yeah.
Imagine the budget.
Yeah. I mean,
You can do whatever you want.
The sad part is, he never gets to show the world his great tricks.
Yeah, well, wait till these memoirs are out.
I don't think the CIA lets you write a memoir. They let you write it, but then they redact it, and it basically comes out like a little fortune cookie.
And it's always inspiring to listen to you. And I feel like I haven't done anything, so I know what to do now.
I feel the same way every time I meet these people to do amazing things. One of the joys of spending time traveling the world, speaking and keynoting corporate events and different conferences, is I get to see other speakers. And this one guy that makes me feel like I've done absolutely nothing, humble as can be, his name's Mully, Mully. And there's a documentary about his life, same name, and I think it's even on YouTube. But I'll do the short version if you want to feel like we've done nothing. He grew up in Africa in a poor dirt hut. He wakes up one day and his family moved during the night and left him behind because they couldn't feed him. He's like 6 or 7. He walks 20, 50 kilometers, whatever, to the big city, finds some family that'll take him in as a servant. I mean, you can't start any humbler than this. He's a street urchin. And he works, he saves up, and he sees that poor people live outside of the city. He saves up to buy a van to drive workers back and forth and make money that way. And then he takes his money that he saves and buys a second, and fast forward, he becomes one of the wealthiest men in all of Africa, a billionaire. Kids ski in Switzerland. He's got 8 kids, wife. Life is as perfect as you could ever imagine. Amazing accomplishment. And then he's driving through town one day in the capital in Africa, and he sees 3 kids on the side of the road that remind him of his childhood. And it just brings it all home to him. So he picks up the kids, puts them in his car, and he comes home and he says, honey, we have 3 more kids. They already have 8 kids. And she's like, you're nuts. But she's like, oh, you provide well for us. You're a good person. I'll do it. I'll adopt these 3 kids. And he does this 22,000 times. He takes his whole fortune, adopts 22,000 kids, builds dormitories, lives with them. He's the father. Has to figure out how to feed them and farm and uses his entire fortune. And now fast forward, it's 25 years later. These are the doctors and the teachers and the government officials. He's changed the entire trajectory of not just those kids, but the entire nation. And there were times where, like, there's no water where they decided to build and their crops aren't going to go. And, he just says, this is where there will be water. And, like, as if by divine intervention, everybody tells him there's no water here. And he digs the well and he finds water. I mean, if anything's going to make you believe that there's something else greater than us, it's his life story. But in one lifetime, the impact he has made. So, yeah, I haven't done anything. And if by inspiring others and writing these books is my way to pay it forward, then maybe I have some small help in making somebody else do something great. Then maybe my time was well spent.
I want to thank you a lot to be such an inspiring person, writer as well. I mean, I know that writing, it's not very easy sometimes, but you're doing a great job.
Oh, thank you so much.
Really want to thank you for the time in Davos. I mean, I came home and I really felt like I need to do something. I haven't done anything. And now listening to that story, it's like, yep, I haven't done anything. Need to do more. So I want to thank you to bring that home.
Awesome. Well, I wish you great success. And
thank you.
And we shall speak again.
Absolutely. At Conversations with Roberto, we believe we can build better brands, experiences, and products by having conversations and learning from experts and leaders in their fields. Send this episode to a friend or friends that need those insights and frameworks, and rate us and review us on your favorite platform. Thank you for listening to Conversations with Roberto. Bye.